All right, so we're switching up the focus now to cricket on the SportsMax zone. August 1st is usually associated with Emancipation Day in much of the formerly British territories in the Caribbean, but that date also stands out as the birth date of Sir Frank Worrell, and yesterday marked what would be his 100th birth date. Sir Frank Worrell stands out in the history of West Indies cricket as he was the first black player to captain the West Indies. And joining us to help commemorate him is Cricket West Indies Global Media Manager, Philip Spooner. Good afternoon, Spooner. How are you doing?
Hi, good evening. I'm fine, thanks. How are you?
I'm all right. And I mean, we have a lot to celebrate because yesterday was Emancipation Day, but also the birth date of such a great man who have made such an impact where cricket is concerned. So Philip Spooner, you're joining us this afternoon to talk about that and the legacy that Sir Frank Worrell has left. So just first of all, your opening remarks, because you're a man very close to the cricket. So, let's just start by talking about the legacy that Sir Frank Worrell has created where West Indies cricket is concerned.
Yes, Maria, thanks so much for having me. And, good evening to all your listeners. Sir Frank Worrell is obviously, he's I shouldn't say obviously, he is one of the West Indian cricket greats that he's not spoken about a lot in the modern era. And that's principally probably because, he died very young at age 42 in 1967. So not many of us were around in 1967, so we might not have that full appreciation for Sir Frank. But the opportunity really presents itself now because obviously you said it's the 100th anniversary of his birth, and that tells you a lot, about why we want to remember him, and his more significant, cricketing accomplishment, if you want to call it that, would have been leading the West Indies in that magnificent tour of Australia in 1960-61. And that's one of the pivotal parts of Sir Frank's career and his legacy, the way he revolutionized cricket. Because up to that point, cricket was, very slow. It was very staid. Very few people had a lot of interest in it. And Sir Frank and Richie Benaud, the Australian captain, came together and said, we have to revive the game because other than that, it could die. And today, 60 plus years later, we remember Sir Frank for that excellent leadership and the way he revolutionized cricket. And really, that was the first true West Indies team that, was pivoted as a true global team of superstars. That team in 60-61. And this is no disrespect to persons like, George Headley, Clyde Walcott, Ramadan Valentine. But that team in 60-61 included Sobers, Kianai, Tammy Smith made his debut then, Peter Lashley, but, Joe Solomon, the famous runner. But, so that team of 60-61 really catapulted West Indies. West Hawks, he bowled the funnel over in the tie test. And the tie test remains up to today the greatest result in the history of cricket. The first ever tie test, nobody probably thought a tie test would ever happen. And when that match happened at the Gabba with that famous run out by Joe Solomon, it's still remembered today as the most famous result in cricket history.
Yeah, and Spooner, I have to ask you because we're at a place in West Indies cricket now where, one of the things, and I sit on this platform every day and I find myself always talking about consistency, right? What can the current crop of players learn from a man like Sir Frank Worrell and what he attributed to his game during his playing days?
Well, leadership for sure is the hallmark of Sir Frank Worrell. He was the ultimate leader. And, West Indies have had some magnificent leaders over our rich cricketing history. We're around the corner from 100 years of Test cricket, believe it or not. 1928 is just around the corner, and that will mark 100 years of West Indies Test cricket. But leadership for sure is the hallmark of Frank Worrell. How he pulled together a team, he galvanized a group of men, and just pulled it together. And so leadership, and everybody you talk to about Sir Frank. I've spoken recently to Sir Wes Hall, to Sir Charles Griffith. There's an excellent book, a biography on Sir Frank called The Son of Grace by Venetia Bash. Anybody who's listening to this should really try to get, and they love the cricket, they should try to get a hand on that book. There's also another book recently put out called Worrell by Simon Lister. Simon Lister, he also did the biography for Sir Clive Lloyd. So he's very much well known in West Indies cricket circles, and his is simply called Worrell. And they look at the legacy of Frank Worrell and what he did for cricket, not only just West Indies cricket, but world cricket. And it's all about leadership, pulling people together, getting them to understand the one common goal, and driving towards that goal. And if you appreciate, in 1960-61, when Worrell, was given the captaincy eventually, fully on merit, it is about a pre-independence era when, men, boys, even women and girls across the Caribbean, they fulfilled their identity and gave them a mirror image of what life should be like and who they should be. And it positioned, West Indies cricket in a way that it could be a driving force and a leading entity across the region. And for that, we are eternally grateful to Sir Frank Worrell.
Well, Leighton, leave you here.
Hi, Leighton. How are you, man? Haven't heard you for a while.
Yeah, we'll catch up soon. We've both been busy. You've been busy with World Cup work and all kind of different things, and I've been up to my neck here with all kind of different things as well. But one of the things, first things, I hear that Barbados has launched a scholarship in honor of Frank Worrell.
Yes, the government yesterday announced through Minister Chantal Monroe-Knight at the Emancipation's celebrations to add the two together, that there will be a scholarship for young sports persons who want to become involved in sports management and sports science. So that's a really great initiative and it is the Sir Frank Worrell scholarship. So that's a good thing and a really honorable thing to do. But for me, I would love to see more done in celebration of Sir Frank Worrell, because that is not to say that he's not honored and he's not regarded highly. There's he leaves on the $5 note in Barbados. So anybody who things are expensive in Barbados, so not many people walk around with $5 nowadays. But no, on a more serious note, he is on the $5 note. There's the 3Ws Oval in Barbados. There's a Frank Worrell ground at the university in Trinidad. There's a Frank Worrell Day in India. So Frank Worrell is highly regarded and respected across the cricketing world. And obviously the biggest one of them is the Frank Worrell Trophy, which the West Indies are desperate to get back from Australia. Yes, yeah. We haven't held it since 1995. But the scholarship is an excellent initiative, and I hope that the persons who get the scholarship and who are blessed enough to receive the funding to go to university, that they would understand the name in which the scholarship is granted, and to really do what they can as well to also project the legacy of the great Sir Frank Worrell.
Another question for you. You mentioned, of course, how Frank Worrell has pulled people together, especially across generations. And you mentioned all the different things that have been done in Barbados. The fact that Frank Worrell played regional cricket for Jamaica and ended up as a senator in Jamaica, do you think his time in Jamaica did something to honor his legacy here as well?
Well, I mean, the entire Caribbean, Leighton, should see Frank Worrell as an icon. And, as I said, there is the Frank Worrell Trophy in West Indies versus Australia. That's a massive thing. But I think we could, other opportunities present themselves. August 1st is Emancipation Day, but it doesn't need to be a set in stone initiative that happens every year. We could have a one-off, Frank Worrell Trophy at the university, for example, where the three campuses play for the Frank Worrell Trophy. Jamaica come and play Barbados play Trinidad, and then Trinidad play Jamaica. So I know not every year we have their games, their championships, which is brilliant for student athletes. So Frank Worrell's name, I believe, should be pivotal in that. And as you said, he was born in Barbados, educated at the historic Commonwealth School, and then University of Manchester. He was a senator in Jamaica when he left Barbados. You said he played for Jamaica, so he's just as much Jamaican as he is Bajan, really.
Exactly.
And he's just an outstanding Caribbean citizen and super role model, if you want to call it that. I don't think they used to call it role model back in the 60s when he was at his height. But he's just a standout, I think across the region, full stop, we could all do, more honoring the great man. But that's not to say that he's not well regarded, because I've spoken to quite a few people across the region and around the world, as a matter of fact. I mean, one of the persons who really is a huge fan, and I don't want to call it fan, but someone who regards Sir Frank in very high esteem, is Shield Berry, who writes for the Telegraph in England, the former visiting editor, and he put out a piece on Sir Frank Worrell's 100th birth anniversary. And even earlier, when the whole talk about baseball and how Ben Stokes was this now the coming, the second coming of great leadership. Well, Shield Berry indicated that there can never be a greater revolutionary captain than Frank Worrell. What Frank Worrell did in 1960-61 is the most revolutionary thing that's ever been done in Test cricket. And Ben Stokes still probably has a long way to go to match the tremendous accolades of Frank Worrell.
And to that point, his leadership, which you've alluded to on a couple of occasions now, when you look at that West Indies team that he captained, it had Gary Sobers, it had Wes Hall, it had Everton Weekes, all great cricketers in their own right. It takes a special kind of person to lead that kind of quality and with such success, especially with that 3-1 victory over England just a couple of years later. It just speaks to how great a leader he was, that he was able to coalesce all of his talent and bring out the best of it.
Yes, indeed. And, I was with the team in 2015, and something happened that I regard as, it wasn't a massive thing, but it was a simple act that explained to me clearly who Frank Worrell was and how revered he is in Australia. And, I mean, I had the opportunity sitting with Courtney Walsh and Sir Clive Lloyd. We met Ian Meckiff, I think. I think he was the guy that was being batted in the last over. And when I was introduced to him, the first thing that he said to me was, how is it back in Barbados, and what is it like? How do you guys revere Frank Worrell? And he was run out by Solomon, and the over was bowled by Hall, but he remembered Frank Worrell. And then I also met Alan Davidson at the Sydney Test match, and the first name that came out of his mouth was, Frank Worrell. Everybody in that series, every man that played in that series remembered Frank Worrell. It was just like, this is the greatest exemplar of the way the game should be played. So then obviously there was the huge parade in the streets of Melbourne, 100,000 people turning out to honor the team after the series ended. And here was Worrell on the top of the car. And, just being showered with praise and adulation and, from the public in Australia. And I believe, I could be wrong, but I believe up to this day, more than 60 years after that series was played, Worrell, passed away in 1967. I strongly believe that Frank Worrell remains the most revered West Indian cricketer in Australia. That might sound hard to believe, but everywhere you go in Australia, they talk about Frank Worrell.
Yep. Well, Spoons, we'd love to talk more about Frank Worrell, but unfortunately we're out of time. I mean, I got introduced to Worrell by reading Cricket's Brightest Summer and reading about that 60-61 series, and I felt that was when I fell in love with cricket as a child. And I think the rest of the Caribbean should probably try to find that book. It's very expensive now, $171 on Amazon. But the fact
get it
is,
get it in the schools.
Yeah, we should get it in the schools, and we should actually start teaching.
Let them understand that the world didn't start yesterday, and it started we're on the shoulders of these great men.
Yep.
Yeah.
And as the more we can educate our young people, the better it is for our societies and our communities.
All right,
but thanks again for the opportunity. Really appreciate it. And anytime you need anything from me or through me or involvements, I'm happy to help. But I'm really delighted that I got the opportunity to speak about Sir Frank Worrell. I'm someone obviously I've never met, but as you say, Leighton, just reading about him and hearing about him from other people who were with him and associated with him, it really does sum up the majesty of this great man.
All right, thanks, Philip Spooner. Have a good day. Enjoy the rest of the evening. Well, that's it. We'll take a break. We'll come right back with more here on SportsMax Zone.